Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Bufnagle the podcast, where we explore entertaining and enlightening discussions of the adventure of life and all things good. From science and technology to history and philosophy to leadership and success. We hope to give you a better understanding of the world and skills for everyone to pursue their own adventure.
Device property. There we go. Here we go. Boop, boop, boop. 94. This sounds a little. Oh, that's way better. This is 94. Okay. Yep.
I put mine at 92, but yours looks it's filling up the thing, and I'll just keep this thing here next to me. We'll go from there. So, yeah,
we did this whole thing without a pre-production meeting and only via email. As with everything else, welcome back to Bufnagle Podcast, where we talk about all things good in the pursuit of the adventure of life while doing everything completely off the cuff with zero preparation.
No. Wait.
It's not zero preparation.
No, because there's been a good deal of preparation behind the scenes that.
I just get a script, right? It's easy on my end.
Script, yeah, but it has been the script we had last week or at the last episode that didn't that we always write the script, but we go as far as till we run out of time because that's the conversational nature here. But that has been revamped somewhat and annotated further, and so we may go even slower than we did last time. So.
But that's okay. It's because we have the listeners here, right, Rafe?
Yes, it is. The listeners are among the greatest listeners on the interwebs because they have made us a global top 10% podcast. As usual, they can reach us at bufnagle@bufnagle.com. Remember to share the love, share the buff, tell a friend to listen, and you will get a free episode. Hit the smile star, the glorious podcast button. If there's a button on there that you can hit that will make my life better, Harry's life better, and the world generally a better place, then you should hit that button because that, quite frankly, that's the least you can do. And if you can give us a 5-star review, that'd be a great thing. And remember, tell a friend to listen, and you will get a free episode. Harry, last time we were talking on this podcast, we discussed light, and we talked about our friend Romer, who used the parallax of Mars to estimate the distances between the planets, and then used that in conjunction with the eclipsing of Jupiter's moon Io and the lag in us getting to see that. He did that and computed the speed of light to, a lot better than I could do. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, I guess my best estimate for the speed of light is turning on a flashlight and hoping to see it from really far away.
Yeah, well, okay. That reminds me, there was this riddle when I was a kid. It was like there was this guy, and it was kind of a joke, right? I knew this guy who was so fast that he could turn off the light switch and get into bed before it got dark. And but the answer is, he just did that because he went to bed when it was still light outside. And there's the trick. Okay. That's one of those trick things. But when you go to bed tonight and you flip off that switch, imagine trying to get into bed before the light goes out. In 1728, which is about 50 years after our friend Romer did his magic with geometry and planetary eclipses and moons of Io and stuff like that, James Bradley was in England, and the story goes that he was on a boat, and at the top of the mast there's a little pennant that kind of gives you a hint as which way the wind is going.
Who's going to be the winner of the NLCS this year?
Yes. Actually, that's where they keep the pennant. It's like the guy who keeps the Stanley Cup, right?
Okay.
There's a little pennant on the top, and he noticed, and this is an obvious thing, but you got to keep your head around it. And it's making advancements. This is a thing, I guess, in any particular technological realm that you're in. It's very rare that new advances come from the people who spend all their time in that realm. It takes somebody coming in from the outside, seeing it in a new way to say, well, why don't you do this? And people are like, sounds like a great idea. So he was on this ship, this boat, and he noticed that the pennant would change position relative to the boat when the boat would tack back and forth to take advantage of the wind. And he recognized that if you thought of the Earth as a boat and starlight as the wind, then the apparent direction and velocity of that starlight would change depending upon where you were in the Earth's orbit. Okay.
Sure.
And that,
Yep.
okay. And I was like, well, yes, that I can see that. Okay. And Fowler says that another way to think of it is like this. I'm going to quote here from Fowler's papers. Another possible analogy is to imagine the starlight as a steady downpour of rain on a windless day. So there's no wind and the rain is falling straight down out of the sky on top of your head. Okay. But you are not just standing still. You are walking in a circular path, like maybe around a track at the high school or something like that. You're walking around a track. If the rain is falling at, say, 15 miles an hour, and you are walking at 3 miles an hour, then you will get more rain will hit you in the front than in the back because you're walking into the rain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the apparent source of the rain will depend upon the direction you are facing at the time, right? So as you walk around the track, the rain will always hit you from the front. So the apparent source of the rain will change as you go around the path. So whether it is slanting down from the north or the east or whatever at any given time depends on where you are on the circular path at that moment. Bradley reasoned that the apparent direction of incoming starlight must also vary in just this way, but the angular change would be far less dramatic. The Earth's speed in orbit is about 18 miles per second. Did you know that? I guess
I guess that had already been solved, right?
Yes, that had been figured out. Well, you can kind of do that if you figure out. Okay, you can do there's some wheel math in there. Okay, it's about 18 miles per second, and Bradley knew from Romer's work that light went about 10,000 times the speed of the Earth. So if you build the little, you can build the little right triangle with the rain falling at 15 miles an hour and you walking at 3 miles an hour, the rain will appear to come to you at 15.3 miles an hour. There's a little vector summation thing that you do.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And Bradley said you can do the same thing, but it's going to be a very, very, very pointy little triangle. And the short leg will be like 18 and the long leg will be like 180,000. And you get that angle. I did the math here. That angle is about 0.005 degrees. So it's like 1/200th of a degree. But if you do that, right, and if you are Bradley in 1728, you are now at the point where you have a telescope and you can measure these kinds of things. And there's been vast improvements in the ability to measure stuff. We are going to see that their ability to measure very small quantities got really, really good, really, really fast in the 17 and 1800s. That's coming up.
Okay.
But Bradley found the velocity of light to be 185,000 miles per second.
Which is almost right on. Right?
It's accuracy within about 1%. Okay. Yep. And this was in what year, Harry? 1728.
Yeah. And, kids these days thinks that their high school physics class was hard.
Yeah. And these guys were doing this, I look at it. I walk into my house and I flip the light switch. These guys didn't have that. All right. Ben Franklin didn't do kite strings and keys till the late 1700s. And this guy in 1728 was estimating the speed of light at 185,000 miles per second. So that's two ways that they had for estimating the speed of light. One of them with the eclipse of the moons, another one with this, what's called, I think it's called attribution of light. Is that the right word? I got to look at it. Right. Hold on. It's called aberration of light. And he discovered that this happens. So the apparent location of something is different than the actual location of it, depending on how fast you are moving and which direction you're going and all sorts of things like that. But those are methods that are out there in the stars for light. And the question comes back to, can't we do it? Can't we really do it like Galileo said, that we should be able to open the lantern and, measure
Determine
time?
how fast it takes you to see the light on a different side and then measure it back. Yep.
Why can't we do that? Well, by 1850, all right, so that's another 100 years or so. By 1850, there are two French guys, a guy named Fizeau and a guy named Foucault. It's probably pronounced something other than Foucault.
Foucault or something.
Foucault,
Or something.
Yep. They figured out a way to do this. Okay, so just to catch up on the math here, okay, if you put two lanterns 10 miles apart, okay, 10 miles apart. I don't know where I can go to see something that's 10 miles from me right now. We live on like 150th Street north of Indianapolis, that general area. So downtown is like 15 miles away. And there's certain like overpasses and stuff you get on, and you can see if you're in the right place, you can look down Meridian Avenue and you can see all the way downtown to some of the big buildings down there. And that's like 15 miles. So if you're at that kind of distance on a log scale, log base 10 scale, you're at like 1. Okay. If you're about that far miles, the time lag between opening and closing the lanterns would be about 1/10,000th of a second. That's the time to go there and back. So you're going to have to be really, really good if you're going to be doing those kinds of things. So, and you can't do that with humans. But this Fizeau guy came up with a way to open and close lanterns very, very rapidly. What he did is he used what's called a toothed wheel. So it's like a saw blade. Okay, so it has, and imagine nice little square teeth on the edge of the saw blade.
You just went to Home Depot and picked it up.
Yeah, you can get them. They're in the aisle with the infrared spectrometers and things like that. Just the tooth wheels for measuring light speed. So he made this rotating wheel, this saw blade, and so imagine a circular saw with 100 teeth on it. So for comparison purposes, a typical saw blade has somewhere between, I don't know, maybe 20 to maybe 60 or 80 teeth per around the edge of the blade, like a 10-inch blade. We sell these at the wood store here.
Oh yeah, sure. You see them all the time.
Yeah,
you can redo this experiment in the wood store. Yeah.
All right, and so what you do is you shine a light through the edge of the blade where the teeth are going. So the light either goes through the hole where the teeth aren't, or it gets blocked by where the teeth are. And what that does is it opens and closes a door over the light beam very rapidly.
It's a really, really fast lantern.
Yeah, and so it's kind of like if I'm doing it right now. You can't see it at home, but I put a hand in front of the camera and I go past real fast. I can block out Harry's vision of me. I only have 4 fingers on this hand. Well, the thumb too, but it's a little short. So I can turn it on and off very rapidly, going back and forth like that. So you can do that with a saw blade. You can open and close that little window 100 times in every revolution. Okay. So if you take the light and you run the light through the little window to a mirror a long ways away, and then the light bounces back, it's going to take some time. The mirror, the wheel is going to move a little bit during that time. And if you spin the wheel fast enough, the light, by the time it goes all the way out to the mirror and comes back, that light will get blocked, or it will be, if the wheel is turning slowly, the light will come back through the same tooth gap that it left. But if the wheel is turning a little bit faster, it's going to hit it and not going to get through. But if you turn it even faster, it'll go out one gap and back through the next gap. Mm-hmm. Okay. So you can do that. And it turns out if you have 100 teeth on your wheel and you do 100 revolutions per second, which is like 6,000 RPM, which isn't, it's fast, but it's not really, really fast. Then you're on the order of 1 over 10,000. That's 1 over 10,000. That's the precision you need to be able to do a 10-mile thing.
Yep.
Okay. So the technology is getting there to do this. Now, if you read this was wonderful to read because Fizeau lived outside of Paris, and he determined
10 miles away from his buddy.
Okay, this is where it got funny to me, because he determined the speed of light using an intense light source at the bell tower of his father's holiday home. So he shows up at his dad's house. He says, "Dad, I'm going to use the summer home, the holiday home, which was outside of Paris in Serendipity, which is a suburb on the west side of Paris." Okay, it's and if you look these up, it's outside of inner Paris. There's kind of a loop of the inside of downtown Paris, I guess you call it. And then the Seine makes these kind of loops that kind of go out to the northeast or to the northwest. And the first lobe of that is where Suresnes is. It's outside that first lobe. And he put a mirror on the top of Montmartre, which is where Sacre-Cœur is. It's at the north side of Paris. And you can find this on a map. You can find these two things. The mirror was 8,633 meters away.
Yeah, that's close.
Okay, so I typed that into the Google machine. I said, tell me how long it takes to walk there. Because you're going to be like, honey, I'm going to go set up the other mirror. I'll be back by when?
Supper?
Okay. Supper, I think. It's like a 2.5 hour walk each way. Right? So you go there.
Oops, my mirror fell down. A squirrel knocked it over.
Oh, I forgot my pliers.
Yes.
Right? But he had to walk over there and set it up. And then he had a line of sight between the bell tower at his father's, what do they call it? The holiday home. And then at essentially where Sacre-Cœur is now. And he ran that thing there, and he turned on he set it all up. So he got a reflection, and the light source that he sent was like we said, it was interrupted by the rotating cogwheel. It had 720 notches. So not 100. He had 720 notches in the wheel.
Wow. Okay.
Now, I don't know how big this wheel was, but he had little notches in
Higher density of notches. Yep.
And he could spin it at a variable rate. And he increased the rotation speed. This is from the Wikipedia article. This is great stuff. The rotation speed of the cogwheel until the light passing through one notch of the cogwheel would be completely eclipsed by the adjacent tooth. So he got it going fast enough so when the light went through, it couldn't come back. There was no,
it was bright on one side, but dark on the other?
No, the light went through the gap, but it didn't come. It went through the gap on the way out, but by the time it came back, the gap was closed. It had turned, and now that light beam that coming back hit the tooth, not the gap.
Okay.
So it went out through the gap, and it came back and hit the tooth. All right. At 12.6 rotations per second, the light got eclipsed. At twice that speed, 25.2 rotations per second, the light was visible again coming through. So when he spun it twice as fast, he could get the light to go out one gap and come back through the next gap.
Yep.
Okay. So, and at 3 times the speed, well then tick, tick, it misses two teeth and comes back in. At 4 times the speed, it misses 3 teeth and comes back in, right? Given the rotational speed of the wheel and the distance between the wheel and the mirror, Fizeau was able to calculate a value of, okay, here's the math, 2, which is there and back, times 8,633 meters,
Distance
times 720 teeth per wheel, times 25.2 rotations of the wheel per second, gives you a speed of 313,274,304 meters per second. So like 3.13 times 10 to the 8th.
Yeah.
And that's it. It's just,
close.
That's just the math. And if you go read his paper on this, there's little drawings of what it looked like when the light came back through, because when it goes over there and comes back, like the light kind of, like if it doesn't go right through the gap, it kind of goes, most of the light goes right through the middle, but around the edges, it kind of refracts a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So it gets a little bit messy as it's getting through. And when it's coming back, when is the light really getting back through the gap? So there were issues with how to measure when the light was coming through.
Like light slit experiments?
Light, exactly. Like, okay, and that's
which they didn't know about yet, right?
Well, they were figuring this out, that light behaves like a wave, and when it goes through, that was part of the issue. Is you couldn't make the slit too narrow because then you have all the scatter. So the gap has to be big enough to let the thing through, but not so big that it gets to be a mess at the other end. So Fizeau's value was a little bit large. The correct value is 2.9. Well, it's 3.00 times 10 to the 8th, and it says it's difficult for Fizeau to visually estimate the intensity minimum of the light being blocked by the adjacent teeth. It was hard to tell exactly where, the light traveled off his mirror that was 8,000 meters away and then came back to him. And you never know, a bird flies in front of it. You get fog in the air. You got it's difficult. This is a difficult thing to do. Okay. So anyway, he wrote this paper up in 1849. Now, Foucault, we used to call him Foucault, I think we used to say. He's the pendulum guy. Okay. So have you ever seen one of those Foucault pendulums? We had one when I was an undergrad. There was a Foucault pendulum in the science and engineering building. I guess it was the science building.
I think I've seen that pendulum.
Yeah. Yes, you have. And there's one of those there's a very big one at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. And there's one at Samford down in Birmingham.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So there's, and you can find them all over. People have built them. And what he demonstrated is that you can demonstrate the Earth turns by starting a big pendulum and just let it swing, and eventually it will change its plane of penduluming, its plane of
oscillation.
Yeah, I'll call it that. Its plane of going back and forth, its oscillation plane stays fixed, but the Earth turns, and therefore it appears that the pendulum is turning, but it's not. So, and its rotation of that depends upon the latitude that you are and the Earth, and there's all sorts of fun Earth science there. But Foucault's the pendulum guy, all right? So he had the same idea as a toothed wheel, but instead he took a mirror, like a vertical mirror like this, Harry, and he spun it. So like when a light reflects off it, that light will spin around, okay? And so
it's like a lighthouse, like an inverse lighthouse.
Yeah, no, just like a lighthouse, but he's bouncing light off that thing. I guess he could have used. You have to use the mirror, and I'll tell you why. So you have a light source, and you shine it off the rotating mirror through a little slit to a mirror far away. The same general idea, and then when the light comes back, it'll come straight back through that slit. And it'll hit the mirror. By this time, the mirror has rotated just a little bit. So when the reflection comes back off the mirror, it doesn't go right back into the light source. It goes a little bit away. And if you measure the angle of incidence of the return piece relative to the going out piece off that mirror, you can figure out how far the mirror has turned in that period of time.
Right.
And you can figure out the velocity. Okay. So he did that. Okay. And he got, the accuracy, he got accuracy within 1,000 miles per second, less than 1% when Foucault did that. And he got a very similar result. Now, the Foucault page, this is where it gets, I love to read these extra little bits, okay? It says that that Fizeau and Foucault had previously worked together on some of these kinds of things, but then they had a falling out. And you never know. Maybe somebody didn't pay for lunch, or if they were both after the same girl, who knows what it was, right? But they did a number of experiments like this. They compared the speed of light through air versus through water. You can take that beam, Harry, and you can split it, and you can send one beam through air and one beam through water, and then line them back up and figure out how much
the difference is for index of refraction.
Yep. And the page also says Foucault originally used tin mercury mirrors. Okay, so you take a mirror and you put tin and mercury on it to make it
reflective,
make it shiny. Yeah. However, at speeds exceeding 200 revolutions per second,
I want to know how he got to 200 revolutions per second.
Right, the reflecting layer would break off. So he's got this great idea. He's going to do this, and when he gets to 200, this mirror is spinning around. Imagine a flat mirror spinning at that rotation. Now, granted, it doesn't have to be very big. It's not like the size of the mirror, and it's not that.
It's like a bathroom mirror. Just go. right through things.
Yeah. So it's a small mirror, but the stuff would start flying off this thing. So he switched to using new silver mirrors, and it says that his limitations prevented him from separating his mirrors by more than about 20 meters. Right? That's what, 60, 65 feet, something like that. Mm-hmm. So, that's the size of a large laboratory room.
Right. Yep.
Right. Okay. And so it said he couldn't get them farther apart than that because of whatever limitations he had. Despite this limited path length, Foucault was able to measure the displacement of the slit image. Okay, so when it comes back, now it's moved over a little bit at less than 1 millimeter. Right? He's measuring a distance. Like, I was thinking that it's going to come back and it's going to be off by an inch, inch and a half, 2 inches, something. No. It was less than a millimeter. When the light comes back, the mirror has moved a little tiny bit. But he measured it to less than a millimeter.
How did he get that accuracy?
He would do a couple of things. He put lenses on them, so when the light beam goes through there and comes back, right? So he focuses that beam. That was one thing that they did, is focus the beam so you could see really precisely where it is. But even like if you take a laser pointer, like I have a laser pointer for like doing work around the house and stuff like that, for showing, like a laser level kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And I did a thing one time, like I took the laser level and I put it on the back deck at night, and I shined it like across the pond to the house on the other side of the
sure
pond.
Your neighbors loved that.
Well, just to see like how big is it going to be over there? Like, and still even the laser beam got big, and like
the dispersion of light from the beam.
Yeah, and these guys were focusing that stuff enough so they could measure it to less than a millimeter. It was incredible stuff, right? And so his figures for the speed of light in 1862 was 298,000 kilometers per second, which is within 0.6% of the modern value. All right, and then right around that time, there's this guy in Poland named Michelson. Okay, Albert Michelson. He gets born in Poland. His family moves to California when he's about 4. In 1869, they're now living in Nevada because the gold ran out there in San Francisco where they were living.
Imagine
that. He applies to the Naval Academy. All right, and he gets denied. The local congressman had already done his what are they called?
Nominations.
Thank you, nominations. All right. So Albert says, well, I'll just go talk to President Grant.
Let me just ring him up real quick. And
so he got on the train. He got on the train in Nevada and took the new transcontinental railroad from Nevada to D.C., right? And he gets there and he talks to Grant. And meanwhile, the congressman had been back out there in D.C., and he said to Grant, you should really let this Michelson guy in there because that would help you get more Jews into the Republican Party in Nevada. So it's all political. It's all political.
Like all things are.
All things are, right? So Grant comes up with this special edition, 11th. He had 10 nominations. And he got a magic 11th one for Michelson because Michelson showed up and talked to President Grant and got a nomination. Okay, this is like an 18-year-old
just
kid.
For the listeners out there, good things happen when you go talk to people and seek out the information that you need to seek out instead of just letting it come to you. There's a lesson just within that statement.
Yeah. You know what? Get on the train.
Go talk to the president. Just don't jump the walls and the fences at the White House. Probably won't end well.
Yeah. So he gets the appointment. Okay. So Fowler says of the incoming class of 92 students, 4 years later, 29 would graduate. Just like a third. Okay. 29 were graduate. Michelson was first in optics, but 25th in seamanship.
And 24 graduated, right? So
yeah. No, 29 graduated. He was 25th, right?
Okay.
All right. The superintendent of the academy, Rear Admiral Worden, who had commanded the Monitor in its victory over the Merrimack. Whoa. Wait, what? This is where these things get really exciting to me because the Monitor and the Merrimack, the ironclad ships, do you know the thing? Yeah. So like that's a whole episode, right? Right. That sentence right there is a whole episode. But this guy, Worden, commanded the Monitor in the victory over the Merrimack. He said to Michelson, if in the future you would give less attention to those scientific things and more to your naval gunnery, there might come a time when you would know enough to be of some service to your country.
Hey, get your rear end in gear.
Yeah, so
because you're not a very good naval gunnery.
Not a naval gunnery, but man, he was a good light speed physicist guy. So he gets put on the ship, the USS Monongahela. He's sent to the Caribbean. He spends a lot of time on the ship because they're going across the Caribbean and the water is very smooth and it's a very nice ride. And he spends a lot of time thinking about this problem that Galileo used to think about. And that is the question of, if you are on a ship that's traveling and it's moving at a constant rate and you cannot see out the windows and you are just stuck in the hold, is there any way to tell that you're moving? That was the question. And the answer is no. You have to be able to experience.
You have to assume that you are at rest because there's no outside force.
Well, but that's the other thing, is there's no outside force you can only tell you're moving if you feel acceleration, right? You can only detect change in motion.
Acceleration, there is zero.
Right. So if you're you are in an inertial reference frame is where he was. All right. So he spent a lot of time thinking about this and the question of whether or not you could determine whether or not you were moving. And that was the same question Galileo had talked about quite a bit. So as Galileo says, no experiment that can be done in a closed cabin can determine the speed or the direction of motion of a ship in steady motion. And that's the whole inertial reference frame thing. You have to measure yourself relative to something outside. So that's Galilean relativity. We're going to get back to that in just a little bit. But so Michelson goes down to the Caribbean and does stuff down there, whatever you do on a ship in 1870 something. And he gets back to Annapolis. Michelson becomes an instructor at the Naval Academy, and he meets the commander's niece, which is kind of a nice thing, Margaret Hemingway, and they get married in 1877, which is fortuitous because Michelson gets asked, hey, why don't you do this experiment that Foucault did with measuring the speed of light? Why don't you do that in class? Could you do that for your students? And so he says, sure, I'll set things up.
I'll just set it up, yeah.
Yeah, and he talks his new father-in-law, who happens to be one of the guys at the Naval Academy. He talks his new father-in-law to putting up $2,000 to help get equipment so that he can do this Foucault experiment. And that's, for what it's worth, that's like $60,000 today. Okay, so he married into so Michelson. Okay, so what did he do? He got on the train. He talked to Grant. He asked his father-in-law for the money. All right, so all of these things are in succession. That's how you get things. Okay, and instead of 60 feet to the mirror that Foucault had used, Michelson uses 2,000 feet along the Severn River in Annapolis. There's a river that comes down next to the Naval Academy there, and he had 2,000 feet, which is like half a mile. He had the mirror half a mile down the bank of the river.
I can just imagine the midshipman like lugging down this mirror.
Yeah, it's like, and these were big
Michelson
mirrors.
wants to set up this damn mirror.
Yeah, we got to do the mirror. We got to do the class thing. It was like, yeah, have you done your physics homework yet? Yeah, we're doing it now. So, but these were mirrors that reflected the light back in there, so he could do the thing. And he measured that distance, the 2,000 feet along the river, to a distance of 1/10 of an inch. So he was very precise about getting rid of those errors in measurement and computation. Right. So he got really good lenses and mirrors, and he gave a final result of 186,355 miles per second with an error of about 30 miles per second. 20 times more accurate than Foucault. And then, of course, what happens then? He gets written up in the New York Times. He's now this superstar physicist guy, and everybody's in love with Michelson because he did this great thing. And Fowler says this was accepted as the most accurate measurement of the speed of light for the next 40 years until who beat it? Michelson did it again, and he did it even preciser, all right, and measured it next time. So Michelson is going to go on, and he's going to disprove the presence of the ether, which is something that we will talk about on the next show. And we will just leave you with this, Harry. If you look at the bottom of these notes I sent you, there is a photocopy of Michelson's 1878 paper in the Proceedings of the American Association for the Advancement of Science. It's entitled Experimental Determination of the Velocity of Light by Albert Michelson, U.S. Navy. And there's the paper. You can read it right there. Here's the picture of how he made the mirrors spin. Here's the little light box he used. Here are his measurements. He was one of the first guys to take multiple readings and then average them to realize that
which is what you're told to do nowadays.
Yeah. So you can get those errors. The standard error of the mean is smaller than the standard error of the individual. So he took 10 measurements and averaged them. But what was really interesting to me is when I found this on Google Docs or whatever it was, there's a paper, this is the proceedings. So there's like 30 different papers in this journal. And the paper right after Michelson's article is one entitled Outline of the Work Done by the Fort Worth Solar Eclipse Party.
Well, it's probably similar to the Westfield, Indiana eclipse party.
Well, see,
right?
I was thinking what we should do is we should write up the outline of the work that we did. All right. And it talks about how these guys, they went here and they went there. They checked weather reports in all sorts of different places to find the best place to do these things. They took lots of they hired artists to sketch they didn't have the photography to do as much work as they wanted to do, and so they would they sketched the aura that was going on there, and they just had a big old. They don't talk about who was in charge of catering, but
it was a necessary part, though. The guy that orders the pizza for the group project still plays an important part.
That's right. So at least be that guy, right? Be one of those guys that does it. So it's really interesting. Find these original papers and read them, and you can go down rabbit holes here, but these are fun rabbit holes. You learn all sorts of things, and then these little pieces tie together. Like the guy who told him he was a bad seaman he was the guy who was in the Monitor and Merrimack battle. So that's a thing that
probably explains why he told him he was a bad midshipman.
Yes, well, but that wasn't his job at the end, was it? So it all works out. Next time, I think we will discuss some more stuff about light, because now we just know how fast it goes, and very soon we will discover the implication of that is something that will blow your mind. So, Harry, that's what we got today.
I think it's good. I think we'll continue to do the same thing here between ourselves that Michelson did, and encourage our listeners to do the same, which is seek the good, live virtuously, and flourish, and enjoy the adventure of life. It's going to be a great day.